Good morning and welcome to Worldwide Wisdom. Today we're going to learn about how Moses prayed to overcome anti-Semitism. You know, you'd think that anti-Semitism is a thing of the ancient past. But no, comes Greta Thunberg with her very, very important agenda. The end is nigh. The world is about to come to an end, and the reason is because Israel is preventing the expansion of the very gentle and peace-loving Hamas industries. This is the reason why she claims that the world is coming to an end. Now, she doesn't mind dumping all that gasoline into the Mediterranean Sea and into the air with her foul mouth and her motorboat through the Mediterranean. But I guess when it comes to defending the Hamas democracy, I guess even the climate is worth trashing. You can't even make this stuff up, you know. Where, pray tell, does this even come from? I believe that it's Moses in this week's Torah portion that's going to put things into the proper perspective. Because remember, as Hasidim, we know that the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad Torah, is Medarf Leben mit der Zeit. We have to live with the times. What does it mean that we have to live with the times? It means, folks, remember? It means that you have to find the answers to your current day quandaries from the weekly Torah portion. That's what it means. As Medarf Leben mit der Zeit. Events happen to us, timed according to the Torah portion, because the Torah portion is not just something which we happen to read on a particular week, but rather Ki heim chayenu, for the Torah is our life. It is the source of our energy. When we remember the doctrine of perpetual creation, which we're learning in Chayenu these days, how the world cannot simply exist all by itself. That's a very shallow, short-sighted, and myopic perception of reality. It is unscientific to expect something to just be and then just stay. That's unscientific, but rather it is the source of life itself, what is called God, the source of energy itself that infuses constant energy into the universe, into every detail of the universe, just like my television screen. I don't have a television screen, but if I had one, just like someone's television screen, if they had one for some reason that escapes me, why they would want to have one, but imagine they did have one. Just like a television screen, you can't say, well, the image is there, so I guess it always was there, and it always will be there. I mean, that's a very, very shallow, myopic perception to say that Fox News is on the TV, so I guess it always was there, and always will be there, right? No, it's because there's electricity running into the back office of the screen. That's why there's a visual. You pull the plug, guess what's going to happen? It's going to go dark, and that's exactly what the doctrine of perpetual creation is. The world exists not because it's there, so I guess it always was and always will be. No, the world exists because God is channeling energy into it at every single given moment in time, like electricity into your television screen. And the moment God was to pull the plug for whatever reason, bam, what's it called to deal with Iran? A snapback? It's called a snapback, right? The minute that happens, then there's not going to be any visual on the screen. If God was to pull the plug on any existence, it would simply cease to exist, right? And therefore, from that perspective, when you look at the Torah portion, not just as some sort of interesting document that might be relevant to people of particular interests, but rather it is the code, the source code of existence, Mark. Do you understand what this means? It's a source code of existence, and therefore, when you're able to look into the Torah, not as a ancient historical document, but rather as a manual for current energy supply lines, you say, okay, if I'm having a problem today with a flotilla, what's it called? Mujahideen? Is that what it was called? No. It sounded like Mujahideen.
No, that's Afghanistan.
Yeah. It was called Medellin, but who cares, right? Doesn't make a difference, right? So when we realize that is the name, this is what we're struggling with right now, then the answer lies in today's Torah portion. I'd like to turn your attention to page 885. or 884 in the blue Chumash. We're always using the Kahot Chumash, Chabad Chumash here. And it's interesting that Tara Lee LaRose, Greta is a paid Soros puppet. Okay, fine, it's getting political. Yeah, whatever. That's 885. All right. So here's what happens. When Moses and the Jewish people are traveling through the desert, Moses declares these very, very special and beautiful words. This is the prayer of Jewish self-defense. And it's actually quite an important idea to realize that this prayer, which you already know, by the way, off by heart, Marty, you already know this prayer. You just might not have realized that it's Jewish self-defense prayer. And therefore, you should say it at any time that you see bad news on the television or elsewhere. Let's take a look at what it is. Page 884, I want you to go to line number 6 in the Hebrew. I'm doing it in the Hebrew first, okay? Line number 6, you see it? Vayihi bin Soharon vayomer Moshe Kumbad Hashem v'yafotzu oivecha v'yanusu mesanecha mibanecha uvenucha yimar shuv Hashem ribevois alchei Yisrael. Let's see the English, verse 35. Whenever, verse 35, right middle of page 885, whenever those carrying the ark that Moses made and has the broken tablets set out, Moses would say, "Arise, God, let your clouds go before us, preparing the way for our journey. May your enemies who have gathered to attack us be scattered, and may those who hate you and are therefore always pursuing us turn and flee from you." And when the ark came to rest, Moses would say, "Repose God." What does repose mean? Rest? Rest God amongst the myriads and thousands of Israel. And that, my friends, is the Jewish self-defense prayer. We actually say it every single time the Torah comes out, which is interesting. Why would we be praying to annihilate anti-Semites, or to, maybe not annihilate, but rather to neutralize anti-Semites? Why would we be praying that every single time the Torah comes out of the ark? It's an interesting time to be doing a self-defense prayer, right? That's the prayer that we say every time the Torah comes out of the ark. Also, it's interesting, if you look closely at the verse, you'll notice that when Moses is talking about the enemies, which enemies is he referring to? Look at the verse. He says, "May your enemies be scattered, and may those who hate you," and now look at the commentary, "may your enemies who have gathered to attack us," right, "be scattered, and may those who hate you and are therefore always pursuing us turn and flee from you." I mean, whose enemies are these? Are they the enemies of God? Or are they the enemies of us? Both. Andy, that is the profound insight of Moshe Rabbeinu. Both. Because the way it works is that you don't have one without the other. When it comes to God's chosen people, people don't mess with the kid unless they want to pick a fight with dad. People don't mess with the Jews unless they want to mess with Hashem. And that is what Moses is saying. He says, "Yafutzu oivecha," your enemies should scatter. "V'yanusu mesanecha," and those who hate you should flee. Elsewhere, and he's pointing out, when it comes to the Egyptians and their final battle against the Jewish people at the Red Sea, Moses says, "Listen, guys, you shouldn't do anything. Don't even try to fight. God will fight for you, and you shall remain silent. Just comply. Do what God wants you to do. Cross the Red Sea. Keep on walking." That's what Moses tells the Jews, and God will fight your battles for you. Right? So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. The way that the Rebbe explains this idea is that the nations of the world know that the Jewish people are a treasured nation unto God from all the nations. This ties in perfectly to what it says elsewhere in the Talmud, that why was Mount Sinai called Mount Sinai? The Talmud says, I believe it's in Tractate Shabbos, that the reason is because the word Sinai is a homonym. You know what a homonym is? A homonym is a word, not to be confused with a homophone, which sounds like a homonym, and I don't know the difference. I was trying to understand this from my child's 4th grade teacher, but it was too complicated for me, so I'm sorry, I couldn't track. But I think a homonym is the one, 2 words in English that sound the same. That sound the same with different spelling, sounds the same, similar meaning. Something like that, whatever. Talmudic. Anyways, so whatever it is, homonym, homophone, Sinai has the same sound as Sinah, which means hatred. And the reason why Mount Sinai, it's called Mount Sinai, the Talmud says, is because when Mount Sinai happened, when God gave us the Torah and chose us as his people, that's when the hatred descended to the world. Because what happened was that the Jewish people were chosen by God. And what did the other nations of the world feel? They felt overlooked. They felt sidelined. They felt that they were unchosen. And therefore, they directed their ire against God to who? To those that were chosen, to the Jewish people. Let's face it, it's a little tough to fight against God. How do you fight against an almighty, infinite being? But if you know what that almighty, infinite being favors, now you got a target.
Cain killed Abel.
Why did Cain kill Abel?
Jealous.
Because he was beautiful. That's a good example. So Cain, why was he jealous? Because God chose Abel's offering over Cain. So really, you could call it insecurity, lack of self-esteem of his own, or you could say that he was angry that God had chosen. He was angry that God had rejected him. How's that? He was angry that God had rejected him, and therefore, what does he do? Instead of taking it out against God, he takes it out on Abel, and he kills Abel. So this is the story of mankind, where those that hate God take it out against God's chosen people. Why? And that's the meaning of Mount Sinai. Sinai means hatred. Sinai means hatred. Sinai means Sinai, right? Because when God chose us, he was effectively saying, guys, there's one more thing I forgot to tell you. You're going to be hated for all time until the coming of Mashiach. You'll ultimately outlive all your enemies, but it's not going to be pretty. That's a little tough. It's a good thing he didn't ask us. Well,
We chose to be the recipients.
yeah, we just said, you know what, we're in. Yeah, it's a good thing. Yes, Mark.
Does this tie into like what's going on today with everything, with the October 7th?
Let's talk about today. So Mark's always relevant, fresh. So let's talk about this. So why is, I'm trying not to get political now, okay? So please bear with me. It's not a political statement. But why is it, we as American Jews, we came to these shores for safe harbor, for safe passage. Many Jews became Democrats in this country. Why? Because they were coming from Nazi Germany, which I believe was right-wing, and here that they just want the freedom for all. Like, don't bother anybody, let everybody live freely.
Came, at the turn of the century, way before Nazi Germany, and yet they still became Democrats.
Okay, that's interesting. It's a good point. Fine. And I'm not purporting to know the reason why, but maybe they came from other oppressions.
Oh, sure.
They came from other parts. All of Europe was right-wing. I mean, they were trying to force conversions. Yeah, absolutely. So they just wanted freedom. Now, which makes a lot of sense. The Jews would want to be part of a party that is pushing freedom, right? Yet suddenly after October 7th, the party of freedom somehow, well, again, it's not a political statement. I'm not talking about a party right now or a presidential candidate, right? But I want to talk just about the mindset. I'm going to talk about the kids on college campus. That's what I'm going to talk about. The kids, the liberals, the progressives, right? I'm not talking about a particular party. I don't know the party affiliations of those kids, but supposedly they're marching for freedom, for these values. Then why are they marching for Hamas?
You can have gays for Hamas. You can have
I love gays.
So how does this even make sense? How does it even make sense, right? Let's think about this. And I believe I have an explanation for it. I think the Jews are whiplashed by this entire experience. We're like, what?
What the hell?
What just happened? That's what the Jews are collectively saying. Like, I remember after October 7th, we were like, look, it's a terrible, terrible calamity. But you know what? The world is going to stand with us. Do you remember October 8th? Do you remember October 9th? Do you remember October 10th? We were like, the world is going to stand with us.
Yep.
It's going to be amazing. We're going to win. Finally, they're going to take up our cause. And then we were like, what?
Yeah.
And we still haven't recovered. We're still trying to figure out what exactly is going on.
Yep.
But I have a theory. So the theory I want to share with you is that I do feel that these progressives are motivated by, they want to do the right thing. But the question is, what defines right and wrong? So I believe that they believe that the Palestinians are the oppressed, and the Jew is the oppressor, right? And therefore they want to free the Palestinian from the Jew. And that's their mindset. But the question is, upon what's the word? Upon what frame of reference do you calculate who is right and who is wrong? I'll give an example. Robin Hood. So Robin Hood steals from the rich and gives to the poor. Is he moral? Is he moral or is he immoral? Think about that for a moment. He steals from the rich in order to provide to the poor. Is that good or bad? Now, you can be forgiven for saying it's good, and you can be forgiven for saying it's bad. There's two ways to look at that. When you're coming with an absolute value of morality, rooted in Torah, rooted in a unshakable faith in God, then Robin Hood is pure evil. Pure evil. And there's no way to justify Robin Hood's behavior because there's an absolute value, and you cannot punish people for being successful. You cannot punish people for having more than other people. It's not like some sort of an entitlement for all people to have the same resources, or if somebody has a neighbor that has more money, therefore he has the right to invade his farm, to shoot him dead like it's going on in South Africa. It's tragic. And to somehow repossess his assets. That's not okay.
Well, there are other ways to help the poor than from stealing,
Exactly.
Like stealing, other than stealing.
And that's right. And by the way, in the Torah, there are mandatory gifts that you have to provide to the poor. Mandatory taxes. There's the corner of your field. There's the tithe. There's a lot of different kind of gifts that we have to provide to the poor. But let me say this to you: when you have an absolute value, an unshakable commitment rooted in Torah, that's when you look at what's going on in October 7th. You're like, this is pure evil. This is pure evil, October 7th. And therefore, I don't care who's the oppressed. This behavior is inexcusable. It's unexcusable, and therefore, you have to condemn Hamas. But if you're going to come with a godless approach, where it's not just that God is irrelevant, but it's actually we're opposed to God. We've actually always had a deep-rooted resentment to God. It's actually 4,000 years old. And we're like, oh, so we've got a chance to lynch the Jewish people. You know what? Let's jump on the bandwagon. And I think that's what's going on with this Greta Thunberg fiasco, where this poor girl, she doesn't know up from down, the poor kid. You know what I mean? She doesn't know, from what I understood, the IDF is forcing all the people on the flotilla to watch the full October 7th atrocities movie. From what I read that somewhere. I mean, that's interesting.
It's not real.
Yeah, it's AI, right?
Israel took charge. As soon as IDF took charge, they said, I'm being kidnapped.
Right. So what I'm trying to say, folks, is that what I believe is what's going on in the riots that are pro-Hamas that make no sense. I mean, again, it's like gays for Palestine is like chickens for KFC. It's as insane as chickens in favor of KFC, right? It's by the way, I don't take credit for that. Bibi Netanyahu said that in front of Congress, I believe. But really, I mean, queers for Palestine just makes no sense. I mean, by the way, I was thinking, why didn't they let Greta Thunberg into Gaza? They should have let her straight in.
Yes.
They should have said, by all means, good luck. And let's see how she would. I mean, what are the odds that she would have actually survived? I don't know. Honestly, I don't.
That's the problem. Israel took charge.
Yeah, it might have been better. It might have been better to let them in, and you know what? Let them document what goes on, because Israel gives out food at the Gaza humanitarian food whatever. Apparently, if you look at the videos, it's Hamas that are shooting their own people. Yep. Because, and by the way, and then the BBC jumps in. There's video. There's actual video. There's actual video where you see Hamas shooting at their own people, and Israel's got drones and they put it out. But BBC's not running these stories, right? They just say, "Oh, people are being massacred because Israel's killing people while they're giving them food." Is the same thing. Right? It's tragic what's going on. But my point of what I'm trying to get to over here is that when your morality is rooted in politics, there's no telling where it's going to end up. But when your morality is rooted in God, you're unshakable in every time and in every place, because the values of Torah apply in every generation and in every place, whether you're living under the Holy Roman Empire, whether you're living under ancient Rome, or whether you're living in 2025 under the ICC and the United Nations. It doesn't make a difference, because essentially every single human being is created in the image of God. Every single human being has the right to survive, has the right to exist, and nobody Nobody can hurt another person unless it's pure self-defense. There's a guy, a Hamas leader. He gets on television. He says that the atrocities of October 7th and the kidnapping were an act of self-defense. That's what he says. That's his line. An act of self-defense. I mean, what kind of self-defense was that, right? Anyways, you kidnap babies for self-defense. Anyways, point is, this is Moses' understanding. And this is how Moses approaches it. He said, look, God, the essence of anti-Semitism is anti-Godism. It's anti-theism. And therefore, he prays to God that God should stand up and defend the Jewish people. So when the ark comes out, when the Torah comes out of the ark, we sing this song, because what would happen was, as the Jewish people would travel in the desert, in this verse that we're reading, as the ark would travel through the desert, all the enemies of God would slink away, would dissipate. Think of a bright light and what happens to the darkness when you bring the light into the dark basement, right? The dark just dissipates in the face of the light. And that's what would happen to the enemies of God. The key here is to understand that the motivation behind our enemies is not just a hatred against the Jews, but on a far deeper level. It's a hatred against God. And therefore, what's the solution? What's the cure?
People.
What's the cure? The cure, therefore, is to double down into our faith. As opposed to hiding our faith, apologizing for our faith, we need to double down and strengthen our connection to God Almighty. That's what we have to do. We have to say, God, we are more committed to you now, more than ever before. I mean, on a very practical level, we cannot rely on the nations of the world to support us. Look at that. I mean, what kind of support have we had? You want to turn to France, to Macron for support? You want to turn to England for support? Good luck, right? Not happening, right? These ones are pushing for a two-state solution right now, even though we've already given them a two-state solution. Gaza was a two-state solution, and yet they say, no, they need a bigger one. This is ridiculous, right?
They couldn't make the first one work.
Right. So therefore, Moses' call, Vayibin Aaron, Vayomer Moshe, inspires us to realize that the true defense from anti-Semitism is for us to strengthen our own commitment to God. And Moses says, Kuma Hashem. He says, Kuma Hashem, God, rise. God, arise. Because God, this is actually not good for business. This Moses is marketing. He says, look, God, it's actually not good for business because the nations of the world are essentially fighting against you. And if you let them beat up the Jews, then it's very clear that you are incompetent. Right? So God, stand up and stand up for yourself, God. In other words, Moses is almost playing to God's to God's business plan. Perhaps, I mean, it's a bit of a crude way of saying that.
Wipe them out. He's just saying scatter them, recognizing that this will always be the case. You can scatter them now; they'll come back again later. Scatter them. He's not asking for God to destroy.
Scatter them. Yeah, there's an interesting way to look at that. Why does he ask them just to? Oh, it's interesting. Maybe when scatter means to weaken their power. Their power is in their numbers. So scatter them like you scattered the builders of the Tower of Babel. When they were isolated, they had no power, right? So that's what we ask of God, to isolate our enemies, to bring internal divide between them. And God willing, may we too merit to see the disbanding of our enemies and of God's enemies. To remember that whether we like it or not, whether we admit it or not, we are God's chosen people. And hiding that fact is not going to help us one bit, because we might deny the fact that we're God's chosen people, but the nations of the world, they know it. They know it. And when they know it, they just think that we're fools for not exercising the fact that we're God's chosen people. So it's time to act chosen. Yes, Mark.
Rabbi, Jews all over the place, and I was wondering, from your perspective, religious Jews who are in places where they're coming under attack from anti-Semitism, whether it's on college campuses, whether it's different countries or different places in the United States. Do you see any of them giving into the fear, or they're totally not backing down?
First of all, I don't think that it's observant Jews particularly that are being attacked. It's not only the observant Jews that are being attacked.
Jews.
All Jews, of course. They don't say, oh, we only want the observant ones. They don't do that. They go for all the Jews, number one. Number two, observant Jews are very, very strong in their faith. Their values are extremely strong. And now is the time for all Jews to double down in their faith. to increase their observance, to increase their commitment. I got to tell you, in our community, there's a revolution of scores of men that are laying tefillin every single day because they know that the verse states in Torah, and the nations of the land will see the name of God upon you and they will fear you. So they lean in on their connection to God every single day to send support, spiritual and military support to Israel through the Jewish people, through the tefillin, through the strength of Torah, through the strength of mitzvahs. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of women that are now lighting Shabbos candles because they know that they count and they matter and their actions make a difference, and that their lighting of Shabbos candles makes a difference. And to all the people that are with me here, online, live, and later, and to everybody that's able to get this message. This is a war, a religious war. This is a crusade. This is a blood libel. This is the lessons of our history coming all together in one incredible war. They even call it the Al-Aqsa flood. This is not about a two-state solution. Al-Aqsa is about Jerusalem. This is about God choosing the land of Israel to give it to the Jewish people through God's chosen mountain, through God's temple in Jerusalem. Now, if the Jews deny their connection to God, then what right do you have to the land? But if you celebrate your connection to God, then we have every connection to the land. This war challenges us to our very core values and principles. It's forcing us, whether we like it or not. And I've been saying this for years, by the way. For years, I've been saying that if we Jews don't wake up on our own, then it's Hamas and Hezbollah that will wake us up. And I hate to say how accurate that was, because Hamas and Hezbollah did indeed force us to wake up. The question is, are we still sleeping? The only way we're going to survive this war is with divine intervention, folks. And divine intervention starts in your own heart. It starts in your commitment to say, you know what? God, I'm gonna bury the hatchet with you. And I'm starting all over. Today is the first day of the rest of my life. I'm going to connect with my rabbi. I'm going to understand what it is that I need to do. Folks, start with tefillin. Men, get yourself a pair of tefillin. Find your local Chabad rabbi. Say, I'm here to pray for Israel with tefillin. I want to do this every day. Ladies, Shabbos candles. Torah study every day. Educate yourself to daven, to learn, to pray every day. Strengthen your connection. Go to your local Chabad house. Pray to God. Strengthen your connection to the Jewish people. Watch the food that you eat. Make your way closer and closer and closer every day, a little closer to kosher. If you do those values of kosher, tefillin, mikvah as well, very, very important. Let me tell you, it's these mitzvahs that are going to make all the difference. They're fighting us because they hate God, and we're going to win when we embrace God. Thank you very much.